Well, actually, in today's video, we're going to have think a little bit about February today. We've got some signs that it could be quite a dry and coldish sort of month coming up, certainly from the CFS, and the latest one of the GFS are hinting at that as well. Also, the ECMWF wants to keep high pressure in situ over the coast. So I think we're looking at quite a prolonged sort of dry spell, starting off cold, of course, through the coming week. But whether we infiltrate milder air around the top of that high pressure or whether it stays cold really is going to be the question. I think it's certainly going to be very dry, I would suspect, through the first half of February at least, but it just depends whether that air mass changes as we go through into the second week of the month or not. I'll also have a look at the central temperature. That's just coming for January, and have a look at the stratosphere as well. So a lot going on. Before I get on with that, let's just say about the ads. There's links to articles on most of the pages at gavsweathers.com. Have a browse through the widgets and any articles that you're interested in. Click through. You'll be able to go off, read those articles. Thanks so much for doing that. Just say thank you very much to Quantum, who I did a webcast with last night. It seems to have gone down very well. I've had some very nice comments. Thanks very much to all of you who have commented, saying how much you enjoyed the webcast. It was great fun to do. Certainly something a little bit different for me, but yeah, thanks very much. It went very well, I think. So we'll probably do some more at some point in the future. Won't be a regular feature because we've got to get our sort of schedules together, but I'm sure something will come up with the two of us within the next few weeks or months or so. So just watch your space and see what happens. So let's start off with the central temperature for January. That's coming in at 4.4 degrees. This is just in from Hadley. It's confirmed at 4.4 degrees, the central temperature for January. That's significantly cooler than the central temperature we had last year in January, which was 5.7, very mild month. It's still a little bit above average. It's still a little bit above both the 61 to 90 and 71 to 2000 average, and it's bang on the 81 to 2010 average. Of course, we've had warming over the past 30 years or so, 30, 40 years, so these averages get warmer as we go along. So for 81 to 2010, which is the most recent average, we're bang on that average with this at 4.4. The other two, 61 to 90, of course, the 60 is a very cold decade, so that's the coldest 10-yearly average. So 61 to 90 and 2000, 61 to 90 and 71 to 2000, we're a little bit above those two, but a much cooler month than we had last January, and thankfully a lot drier as well. We haven't been deluged like we was last time. I think the January forecast from GavsWeathers went quite well. I'll do the February forecast tomorrow and we'll verify the January forecast, but I think it went okay. Just a quick look at the stratosphere. This is over top of the North Pole. A few people can asking me what's happening with the stratospheric warming. We're getting another warming, but it's not going to be the sudden stratospheric warming that was being indicated a few days ago. So this is the situation today over the North Pole in the stratosphere. That's the very top layer of the atmosphere, or one of the top layers of the atmosphere. And it's this warming here, indicated by these yellow colours, that's infiltrating into the North Pole again. To get a sudden stratospheric warming, we want to send that to sort of red colours. And it doesn't happen through this first week, but this warming does infiltrating to the North Pole. Here it comes, and it's a fairly significant warming again. It's very similar to the sort of warmings that we've had really throughout the winter. We've been getting these warmings constantly coming in from Siberia. They aren't sudden stratospheric warmings. They aren't sending the temperature going up by about 50 degrees or something. They're sort of 20 to 30 degree temperature warming, so quite significant, not sudden stratospheric warming. But the more of these we get, of course, it should be a cumulative sort of effect. I talked about this a little bit in the webcast last night. A cumulative effect should take place. The more of these warmings that occur, it's sort of like death by 1,000 cuts on the polar vortex. It just keeps hammering away at it. Eventually it should kill it off, but actually the polar vortex is coming back very strongly through this week. But anyway, that is the situation that's going to be taking place in the stratosphere over North Pole this week. Another warming coming in, yes, but again not that sort of sudden stratospheric, very intense warming that we sometimes get and can lead to very block conditions. Happened in 2013, of course. So let's have a look at the CFS. This is for the coming coming month. These are broken down into weekly pairs. The first weekly pair, 500 millibar height anomaly chart, takes us from the 1st to the 7th of February. This is just in as well, latest update. And here we go with the trough of low pressure indicated by those blue colours there over central parts of Europe. So low pressure trough is in there through most of Central Europe. Got the ridge here out in the northern Atlantic, sitting to the northwest of the country. The flow is going something like that around the troughs and ridges. So again, good representation of the situation in the coming weeks. It's going to be a cold week. I'm not sure it's going to be much more snow, really. Could be some around the coastal fringes, but probably not a great deal more snow to come. It's certainly going to be a cold week, with that high pressure to the northwest, but low pressure to the southeast. And yeah, we're pulling the winds down from a north or northeasterly direction. As we go through to the next weekly period, and this is the period that's causing us all the problems, will it turn milder with this high pressure sinking, or will the high pressure remain in a cold position? Now, the CFS V2 is very keen on most of these updates that are coming in to keep the cold weather extending out through February. So here we are for the second weekly period. This takes us from the 8th to the 14th of February, showing that the high pressure is centred just to the north of Scotland, really, and the low pressure is down in across Spain and Portugal. Quite a deep trough there. Could be very wet for them if that came off. But the flow with that is coming easterly, withdrawing in easterly winds around that high pressure. It's fairly close, so again, not sure there'd be tremendous amounts of snow. It would be pretty dry, very dry probably, but it would be cold. That will keep the cold weather going into the second week of the month, rather than the high pressure sort of sinking and dragging in cloudy, mild muck around the top of it. That would keep us in a cold easterly flow through the second week of February. Now we go through to the third week of February, and look at this, very interesting. No real change in the position of that high pressure above average heights, really. This is a height anomaly chart, but it's telling us where the high pressure is roughly, and again it's just there across to the north of Scotland, going into Scandinavia. Again, the flow is easterly, coming in across the country, maybe more southeasterly. But again, that is cold. This dates from the 15th to the 21st of February, and that would be another cold week. So very interesting that the CFS V2 is going for this idea, but it's going to be a cold month. Probably not huge amounts of snow, very dry if this comes off, but cold and particularly at night, potentially very frosty month coming up. And even going through to the final week takes us from the 22nd to the 28th. Look, the red colours are still in there over Scandinavia, although they are becoming a little bit weaker, and the trough of low pressure in the Atlantic is finally starting to try and move in, but it's a slow old process. That could be a bit of a snow event type situation through that week, as the Atlantic tries to get in, has a real battle on its hands to do it, and the flow, well, got easterlies coming around that high pressure still, but with the troughs trying to come in from the Atlantic, also trying to establish sort of southwesterlies milder flow. But it's a real battle that high pressure is still more or less in there over Scandinavia, so a battleground UK through that week. That could be that final week of February could be the snowiest week of the month if that was to come off. Now, I have to say that the most of the models are sort of in disagreement with this idea from the CFS V2 that the cold is extending out through February. You know, most of the shorter range models anyway, but quite what CFS is doing with this, I'm not sure. It's very consistent with this idea, but it wants to keep the blocking going through February. So these are how the temperature anomalies stack up through those week periods. So the first weekly period from the 1st to the 7th of February shows we're colder than average. We're in those blue and green colours over here in the top right hand corner of the chart. As you look at it, we're always on the periphery of these charts, but there we are, we're having a colder than average week through that period anyway. We go through to the next weekly period, takes us from the 8th to the 14th, and again colder than average. We're in the green and blue colours there, as is most of Western and Central Europe as well. Very cold through central parts of Europe also. Anomalies there going below 3 degrees below average. So another cold week coming up through that weekly period. This is a cold February being indicated here. The anomalies start to recover a little bit as we get through into the third week of the month, but still generally the idea is a bit colder than average, not as substantially cold, but still colder than average through that period from the 15th to 21st. And then finally, we're going up to nearer normal as we get through to the last week of the month, the 22nd to the 28th. Remember, this is the battleground sort of week. There we are over here. We're in the battleground with the low pressure trying to come back in off the Atlantic, and the high pressure probably receding a little bit, but a slow old process. But that's a cold and average February there. Definitely being indicated by the CFS V2. That would tie in very nicely with my winter forecast, by the way. So as we go through to the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles, we can see the split that's occurring. Now, we've got very good agreement. Now I've got this colder than average period. Now, this is the 1st of February, right at the start of the chart. And we go through to, say, the 7th. So the first week of February is going to be cold than average. Substantially through that weekly period. Now, this is the period that's causing all of the problems. This second week of the month, and you see that the general idea from the ensembles is to lift the temperatures up above average. The red line here is the 30-year temperature average, and most of the ensemble members are going above average. So there's still plenty there that are cold and keeping it cold through the second week of February. So whilst the general trend of the ensemble is to lift the temperatures up through the second week of February, there's enough there to sort of suggest that the cold could hang on, actually. And even if the temperatures do lift up in the upper atmosphere, of course, if the high pressure is sitting right over top of the country, it will still be cold on the surface. So it could still be cold on the surface through inversions. Notice very little in the way of precipitation throughout this ensemble chart, even as we get through to the latter stages of the chart over here, where you would usually get the Atlantic coming back in. Not with any great conviction on those ensembles. That's a very dry looking ensemble indeed, and I think we could be in for a significantly drier than average start to February. Now, the GFS 6 o'clock run, very interesting what this is doing. It's a little bit different to the last few operational runs of the GFS model. So let's start on Wednesday. We've got high pressure out to the west of the country, bring down this northerly flow, in going a little bit northeast. That could bring some snow showers onto the east coast. We don't really pull that easterly off, though, as we go into Thursday. But by Friday, we do get the easterly in there across England and Wales. Instead of sinking, the idea from the GFS in recent operational runs is to sink this high pressure by Friday. Now, on this very latest run of the 6 o'clock run of the GFS, it wants to keep the high pressure just out to the west of the northwest, and that does allow this easterly to come in across England and Wales. That's a very cold easterly. Look at the upper air temperatures going down to -10 at 850 HPA. I'm afraid that would be a bitterly cold easterly wind and probably producing snow showers in the east and the southeast as well. Now, as we move through into Saturday, the high pressure attempts to make a bit of a sink down across the country. So that easterly wind probably cut off a little bit, and there it comes into Sunday, high pressure sinking in. But then it goes back up to Scandinavia, actually. It doesn't sink over the country and drift to the south. So by Monday the 9th, we're back into an easterly wind there. This is different from the GFS operation. It hasn't been doing this on the last few updates, so great caution is needed with this. It could be an outlier, but certainly by Monday the 9th, we're back into an easterly flow then and keeping it cold into the second week of the month. And look at this, we go through Tuesday the 10th and then on into day 10, which is Wednesday the 11th, and we're still in a cold flow, trying to bring a bit of a trough in from the Atlantic. That could bring some snow, but the overall idea is that high pressure is in there over Scandinavia, and it's keeping it cold well into the second week of the month. And just going out beyond that, don't normally go out beyond day 10, but the idea is still for high pressure to be clinging around Scandinavia, still keeping the flow generally easterly. Not a great deal of snow, it's not going to be a snow fest, but keeping it cold right up to the middle of February. Here we are as far as we can go with the GFS to Tuesday the 17th. We're still in that easterly wind, still bringing the easterly in across the country. Once the easterlies get established, it can be very hard to get rid of them. The problem is always getting them going. It normally goes wrong in the process of building the pressure up over Scandinavia, but once you actually lock it in, it can be very hard to get rid of an easterly wind, and that just keeps it going right out to Tuesday the 17th as far as the 6 o'clock run of the GFS goes. That's in line with the CFS. This is the kind of thing that the CFS V2 is seeing on those weekly anomalies. The ECMWF doesn't really bring the easterly wind in. What it does is sinks the high pressure down across the country by 70%, and actually we're dragging a little bit of mild muck around the top from the Atlantic, so it probably turns a little bit milder over the weekend. As you get through towards the start of next week, Monday the 9th, high pressure is still in there, so still very dry. It's just trying to pin down the exact position of this high pressure. Again, if you follow the isobars back, we'd probably drag in a little bit of mild muck around the top of the high, but notice it's very deep trough over Scandinavia, bringing very cold air, shots of very cold air to Scandinavia and Central Europe. If this high was a little bit further west, we would be able to tap into that very cold air. And we end up on day 10, Wednesday the 11th. Remember, at this point, the GFS 6 o'clock run has a high pressure centred over Scandinavia and bringing in an easterly wind. Not on the ECMWF, it actually has a high pressure still centred over the top of the country. That would probably be cold through inversion type cold, so frosty, foggy with that sort of snow. So I think we're looking at quite a cold sort of start to February. Certainly the first week going to be cold. Perhaps even cold in the second week. Whether it's proper cold, and by that I mean whether it's the easterly wind coming in, or whether it's just inversion cold with high pressure sitting over the country and low level cold air. That's the question mark that we've got to try and fill in. But overall, a very dry first half to February looks likely, and pretty chilly as well. I'll keep you updated. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.